At the start, last September 2nd, the 23 Whitbread racers made their way down the Solent toward Punta del Este, Uruguay, 6,300 miles away. Thousands of spectator boats arrived to share this emotional moment. Steinlager, one of 2 New Zealand entries, was an early favorite. Even this powerful 80-footer had some wild rides and heavy seas. As predicted, Steinlager finished first, winning the Beefeater Trophy. After a 3-week layover, the fleet started again on October 28th off the sunny beaches of Uruguay. On leg 2, the fleet encountered heavy downwind sailing in the roaring 40s. Under spinnaker, some boats reached speeds approaching 30 miles per hour. Fortuna, a Spanish entry, logged 405 miles in one 24-hour period. The cold 7,600-mile leg was a test of the sailors' mettle. There was a lot of broken gear and broken bones. The sensitive race boats were hard to control. Here, Maiden takes a knockdown in big seas. Enormous icebergs were one of the hazards, especially at night and in fog. On leg 2, the action was non-stop. The temperature was freezing, the wind chill debilitating. Steering and working on deck was tough. Concentrating on racing took all the fortitude and discipline a sailor could muster. Once again, it was Steinlager, the big red boat, taking line honors. A pattern was developing. It was a happy skipper Peter Blake, a veteran of 5 previous Whitbreads, who waved and later accepted his second Beefeater Trophy. The next day, Rothmans and Merritt passed within a boat length after 75 miles of ocean racing. With press boats and helicopters recording every moment, the 2 engaged in a jibing duel to the finish off Fremantle. Rothmans stood by on the inside and beat Merritt by 28 seconds. Leg 3 from Fremantle to Auckland, New Zealand is the shortest, only 3,400 miles, but good racing is in store. Only 2 days before Christmas, the fleet set sail from Australia. Steinlager and Fisher and Paykel, the 2 New Zealand powerhouses, had an early battle. After the start, Merritt, skippered by Pierre Fellman, rounded the leeward mark first. Fisher and Paykel was sailing fast, with the crew watching their nemesis, Steinlager, steaming alongside. After several hours, Fisher and Paykel took the lead, charging along at 15 miles per hour.
Probably close to 13 knots.
Steinlager hit 28 miles per hour on that surge. Here's Fazizi, the Soviet Union entry, doing what it liked best, reaching in heavy air. Rothman skipper Laurie Smith surveyed the scene. While on board Merritt, the crew watched as Rothmans caught a wave and surged past, and there was still 2,000 miles to go. French entry Charles Jourdain had a gash opened in the hull by a passing whale that wasn't watching where it was going. Luckily, the damage was above the waterline. They patched it with gaffer tape and raced on. Union Bank of Finland lost their mast 30 feet above the deck. Their low-profile jury rig didn't look fast, but it worked. Here we go, reaching down big waves in heavy air. Hang on as the Speedo hits 20 miles per hour and more. This is why Whitbread sailors keep coming back. There's nothing quite like it. Sailing-mad New Zealanders took to the cliffs to watch the boats finish. As Steinlager approached, everything looked peaceful, but there was trouble ahead. Fisher and Paykel sailed toward Auckland just a few minutes behind a red rival. 10 minutes behind them, after 3,400 miles, Merritt and Rothmans were battling it out once again. Meanwhile, up ahead, the 2 catches continue to duel. In a sudden squall, Fisher and Paykel's spinnaker breaks free and flails out of control. Steinlager finishes first amid a throng of well-wishers. Accompanied by a crowd of spectators, Fisher and Paykel crosses the line just 6 minutes later. Caught short by the same squall, Rothman's main is suddenly in tatters. After the tough 28-second loss to Rothman's on leg 2, arch rival Merritt enjoyed the moment crossing third. But Rothman's did a good job repairing the damage, finishing just 10 minutes later. On the Auckland waterfront, 50,000 people crowded the docks to greet the sailors. 2 of the wounded finished, Charles Jourdain wearing a patch, and Union Bank of Finland, looking like a native fishing boat with a steadying sail. Whitbread race works like this. There are 6 legs, and the overall winner is the boat that sails all 6 legs in the least amount of time. After the first 3 legs, Steinlager leads with 65 days, 19 hours, and 54 minutes. Welcome to Auckland, New Zealand for the start of the 4th leg of the Whitbread Round the World race. Hello again, everybody. I'm Gary Jobson. The New Zealanders, or Kiwis as they call themselves, take sailing seriously, and there are over 10,000 boats out to watch the start of this race. The 4th leg starts here and goes on to Punta del Este, Uruguay. It's 6,300 miles, and they sail past the infamous Cape Horn, the windiest point in the world, where the winds can be as strong as 90 miles per hour. So far, the races belong to Steinlager, but in the 3rd leg, Fisher and Paykel was only 6 minutes behind. The other crews are getting sharper, and they hope to take the lead this time around. It's a gorgeous day in Auckland, and unusually calm for this part of the world as the Whitbread fleet crosses the 2-mile-long starting line. The finish in Punta del Este is 6,300 miles across the Southern Ocean, where heavy winds, icebergs, and fearsome Cape Horn await. The Swedish boat, the Card on the left, gets off to a great start. Thousands of Kiwis watch this race both on land and in the water as they crowd close to get a glimpse of the action. This time, Steinlager and Rothmans engage in a duel. The boats created a maze, as the Card had difficulty navigating her way through the spectator fleet. Let's take another look aboard the Card.
That's all right. Hold the course a moment.
On board the Card, shock turned quickly to action. The crew cut away the wreckage. They dumped it overboard and kept going.
Just after the start, we were on starboard tack and we came in through some spectator boats. One boat, sailboat, anchored. We passed it to windward and cleared our main mast from his mast, but unfortunately our cap shrouds, the leeward shroud on the mizzen mast, got hooked into the top of his mast, and he has dragged down our mizzen and broke in 2 places. Here we are now as a sloop, a little bit early in the race.
So the Card was a single-masted boat and well behind the fleet, but she surprised everyone. With her shortened rig, she caught and passed most of the fleet within 30 miles. But some of the Card's crew was still in shock.
I never came over that at all. The whole leg it was disturbing me. The other guys were very nice to me, and you know, of course, I was blaming most of the incident on myself. And it took all leg to get over it.
Light air persisted for several days after the start. As a result, the fleet of 23 boats stayed close together. The weather was warm, the night starry and moonlit, On board, life was easy. And with boats all around, it felt like a day race on the bay. Fisher and Paykel's skipper, Grant Dalton, shared his analysis of the race.
Everybody's going about the same direction and everybody's got about the same amount of wind. The lead that Merritt had built up to about 20 miles off his cape is now being cut dramatically, and she's now only about 8 miles ahead. Steinlager about 1 mile behind, and Rothman's about 15. So it's a very, very even race at the moment, and everybody's got about the same amount of speed. We're not really expecting any major change over the next day or so either.
Steinlager was doing well, and as usual, skipper Peter Blake had a plan.
We're at the top of the tree at the moment, and there's only one way you can go. You can either stay sitting on the top of the tree, or there's all these other people around trying to push you off or cut the tree down from around you. So you can only really go down.
The card used 2 spinnaker poles to jury rig a mizzen.
Looking glamorous, like Midsummer Eve.
They hoisted a recut spinnaker, and presto! Innovation is what the Whitbread race is all about. And we'll be back in a moment. As Steinlager and Fisher and Paykel prepared to round Cape Horn, they are once again sailing side by side. These 2 boats have been locked in combat since the start 8 months ago. The jury-rigged mizzenmast, the card made out of a spinnaker pole, couldn't stand the strain and collapsed, but it was a noble try. After 4 slow days, Fazizi got some breeze, but Skip Novak was looking for more.
Well, we're hoping we're going to get stuck into more breeze as we go further south. We're going to probably get down to 55, 56, and then start thinking of turning due east.
Among Fazizi's crew was Life magazine writer and yachtsman Roger Vaughan.
On a couple of my wheel watches yesterday, the boat hit 17 knots, and I suddenly understood why I'm here. There's nothing like it. It's an 82-footer that handles like a dinghy.
With no table, no shower, and 5-foot headroom, living aboard Fazizi was very uncomfortable.
It's a strange boat. Living on it is cruel and unusual punishment. I'd like to find those young Leningrad designers who designed it.
Vaughan said what he liked best about Fazizi were the Russian sailors, whom he called gracious, good-humored people. The fleet encountered huge icebergs by the dozen. Crews watched apprehensively for growlers, big chunks of ice that float just beneath the surface. But mainly the sailors were awed by the pristine white bergs that were so massive, so silent. Located at the southern tip of Argentina at Tierra del Fuego, Cape Horn is the most weather-ravaged headland in the world. Boats trying to round the Cape have been known to give up and sail 10,000 extra miles.
This is Cape Horn, 3 miles off our port bow. Steinlager is 4 miles ahead of us.
Cruising comfortably on this day, Steinlager was first around Cape Horn. After Steinlager and Fisher and Paykel, Rothman's was next. Celebrations and observing Cape Horn traditions were the order of the day.
Hooray for the cod crew rounding the Cape Horn! Hooray! 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 Hooray!
A cruising boat out of Tierra del Fuego came out to offer good cheer. The good weather held for Fazizi, cruising by Cape Horn a day later. Naturally, the Russians celebrated with vodka. But Cape Horn weather returned to normal, and the rest of the fleet had it a bit rougher. Wind and seas built up, and once again, boats, gear, and sailors were tested.
We were hit with a northwest with gusts of 50 knots, and it soon jumped to 70 knots. And then before we knew it, it was registering 89 knots on the clock, and we dropped. Well, actually, we tore the leech out of the main and dropped the main, and we were surfing at 29 knots without a main. And it only lasted about 2.5 hours, but it's pretty exciting.
North of the Cape, Rothman's was on the last 1,000 miles to the finish, minding her own business when, snap, went the boom, breaking halfway down its length. The crew lugged the jagged metal below for repairs. Meanwhile, Rothman's did the best she could without a boom. The final stage of the repair was done back on deck.
Perfect for us. For something like this to happen, we've lost very little.
Rothman races on with the boom back in place, all in a day's work. On the Whitbread, sailors can expect a lot of broken gear. crewmen are selected for their ability to repair the boats as well as sail them. NCB Ireland broke her boom for the third time, probably setting a Whitbread record.
One hit!
In spite of the setbacks, good humor prevails.
And the crew is going absolutely stark raving bonkers.
And we'll be back in a moment. Welcome back to leg 4 of the Whitbread Round the World race as the fleet sails north after rounding Cape Horn. There's still 1,200 long miles to go. Off the coast of Argentina, in an area shown by the yellow circle, the Finnish yacht Martella lost her keel and rolled over on February 26. The crew heard a strange noise under the boat, and a diver was sent to investigate. So when the keel dropped off, it was a shock, but not unexpected. The news was immediately broadcast to the fleet. Aboard Merit, Pierre Feldman tells his team they are turning back to assist Martella's crew. Charles Jourdain was also close to Martella's position and went to assist. The Merit sailors were sobered by the sight of Martella upside down with her crew stranded on the overturned vessel. Martella's crew was lucky. The boat turned over in daylight under a bright sun and moderate wind. They expected it, and 2 boats were within 4 hours of her position. If it had happened at night in heavy wind, it could have been a disaster.
It was mostly disbelief. No one could really believe this was happening to us. We were prepared for it, but no one really believed it was going to happen. Even when it did happen, it took a long time before we actually could accept it as happening. It happened so quickly, we didn't really think about it at all. It was about 15 seconds from upright to completely upside down. So it was reaction rather than thinking. It was like a car accident. It's all in hindsight.
So there you are, you're sitting on the bottom of the boat. What are your thoughts as you're on the bottom of this boat now?
Where are the planes? Where are the helicopters? Where are the big ships that are in the area? We'd seen them all night long, and they were gone.
Martella's crew was welcomed aboard both boats.
They were actually wonderful. Right away they brought us downstairs, gave us dry clothes, gave us some hot coffee, some tea, some food, because we didn't have any food for a while. And they put us right into a watch system so that instead of sitting around thinking about it, we were right back up sailing on deck doing watches. And it was very good for us. They were great.
With 8 additional crew on board, Merit and Charles Jourdain raised sails and resumed racing. Martella, a sickening sight, is left for salvage. The jury would award time allowances to Merit and Charles Jourdain for their assistance. Maiden, with her all-female crew, was also having problems. A huge wave knocked down the helmsman during a gale. She injured her back and broke the steering wheel. A bad leak developed as well. Maiden's crew was exhausted from their ordeal.
We went through 2 days of very, very bad weather, 40 knots on the beam, which is a great speed for the boat, but the boat really suffered. We did push the boat very, very hard, maybe too hard. We discovered a leak when we were heeling over to starboard, which could be something on deck level on the starboard side, although we still haven't found it. Basically, it took us 24 hours to pump the water out as fast as we could pump out. The water was pouring in. It's a little bit scary.
Yeah, well, it just happened to be right after Martella's keel fell off, so of course that was right in the back of our mind. But it all worked out. The only lasting problem from that was that we got water in the engine and the generator and the water maker. So we got a lot of electrical shorts and things that we had to clear up for the next few days.
Just physically surviving the rigors of this grueling race is an accomplishment. Even among this tough crowd, seasickness is a common malady. But today, there's an answer.
It's useful for people that has tends to get seasickness, and this is a very active drug called scopolamine in this little tape here that is absorbed by the skin, and you need very low concentration in your blood to have the effect of this. And it's the actual substance has been in other seasickness pills previously, but this is pretty new and it's pretty efficient.
There's a lot of different kinds of technology being used in the Whitbread race, and you expect that in the construction of these composite hulls and the sails. But there's also some interesting pieces of technology, like these onboard cameras found here on NCB Ireland. Plus, every boat has been issued a Sony Handycam to get the pictures that we're all enjoying now. Throughout leg 4 of the Whitbread race, Steinlager and Fisher and Paykel continued to battle for the lead. In Punta del Este, a crowd gathered for the finish. Once again, it was the big red boat from New Zealand making it 4 straight firsts.
We didn't really go all out to try and get line on us here. We just wanted to hold our status quo with the rest of the fleet.
Fisher and Paykel's Grant Dalton was still hopeful.
There's mammals out there, and there's all sorts of things, and we've still got a long way to go. They could damage something, and if they do damage something, then we'll be through.
Rothman skipper Laurie Smith had an aggressive plan.
We are prepared to take more risks. We're 3 days ahead of the 5th boat, so we've nothing to lose situation.
Carrying Martella's crew, Charles Jourdain and Merritt swept across the line. Martella's skipper was feeling good after his frightening experience.
We heard a crash and the boat started to heel over. We had been prepared so that no one slept down below, and we had all the emergency gear and life rafts prepared on deck. So when it happened, only 4 guys got wet and all the others were prepared to climb on the turned out hull.
The Card, sailing as a sloop, finished the next day. The collision was still on Roger Nilsson's mind after 24 days.
Of course, he didn't feel very guilty about it, and we felt guilty, at least I did.
Happy to be in at last, Maiden finished 10 days after Steinlager.
All the problems that we haven't had on the first 3 legs have all been sort of saved for this one. The weather has been absolutely atrocious. It's either been non-existent or blowing a gale. It's the most unenjoyable sailing I think I've ever done. The 4 weeks have really been just get through one day and get to the next.
American Dawn Riley was recognized later for her valiant efforts.
First is a special award to Dawn Riley of Maiden, and her citation reads, "Despite severe gale conditions, Dawn worked down below for over 50 hours on the generator and engine, and so enabled Maiden to continue in the race."
So after the first 4 legs, Steinlager continues to lead with Merritt second, Fisher and Paykel third, Rothman's fourth, and Charles Jourdain fifth. The Card is sixth, followed by Fortuna, Gatorade, Sackquote, and Fazizi. In classes C and D, Equity and Law is first. Maiden drops back to third. And in the cruiser class, it's Crichton.